Evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Can you hear me okay? Is it a little soft? Okay, better. Good. I'll try and be a little bit louder for some of the background, to combat some of the background noise. I want to thank you all for coming. My name is Roy, and I'm with Elation. You also have probably met a few of my colleagues, Garrett in the green shirt, Greg in the checkered shirt, the blue and gray checkered shirt, and Prabhat in the black vest back there. So we're all with Elation. If you guys have any questions throughout the evening, definitely grab one of us. We are more than happy to answer some of your questions. I wanted to briefly just run through tonight's agenda because I think we have a really nice agenda that accommodates your schedules to get back to your families. We don't want to keep you for the entire night. So to start, I'll just briefly talk about Elation for 5 minutes. That way you kind of get a good company background overview, understanding of the company that we are, and then jump right into about a 20 to 30 minute panel discussion. Where we have very nice volunteers that use Elation in the community here to answer some questions. And then after that, you've probably seen a couple of these signs behind me and to my left, breakout sessions. A few of the Elation team members are going to lead a couple of breakout sessions to basically demo the product because we know that's most of this evening, and you want to see that. So without further ado, I just want to take a couple of moments, one, again, to thank you all for coming, and two, to really talk about Elation and why we do what we do, is to service folks like you and our customers. So jumping right into it, in 2009, 2010, our co-founders, who are siblings, grew up in their father's private practice in Walnut Creek, and he was coming from paper charts. And he went through the litany of EHR evaluations that I'm sure many of you or all of you have done or are currently using. Just to get a show of hands, is anybody not using an EMR? Not using an EMR. Okay, not using an EMR, so two. So that's exactly where we came from. He tried a couple of the free ones, Practice Fusion, other ones, and came back to his children who grew up in his practice and they had great collegiate careers, who wanted to help their dad and providers across the continuum to use a system that really acted the way physicians thought. So we're very much so a growing company in the sense that when a provider raises their hand, we want to take that feedback into serious consideration and try and aggregate a lot of that feedback and put it into the product. So we'll sit down with our providers like this evening and talk about what they want to see. Physician feedback is very, very important to us. And so I think having that grassroots is really it's important to not just the building of the product, but the iteration as we go forward. And so now fast forward into 2018, we have over 30,000 clinical users on the platform in all 50 states. So we're a nationally recognized EHR. I'll ask a quick question. Two questions. Does anybody know what an NPS score is, a Net Promoter Score? It's okay. I did not know. Greg in the background, the Elation guy's raising his hand. I did not know what it was until I worked at Elation, and I probably should have before that. It is basically a one-question survey that any company can use. So Costco, wholesale, Apple, Amazon, Visa, run these NPS score surveys. And we scored a 70, which is second to Costco, who has a 79. I will attest to that. Their return policy and their customer service is phenomenal. But the question is that they send out, how likely are you to refer this product or service to a colleague or a friend? It's one question, and it's either a yes or a no. And so we were above what Apple is. Obviously, there's different companies there. They're a huge worldwide international company. But I think what's important to note in something like that is EMRs are in an industry that's very heavily criticized, and as should be, by physicians. You're not just going to use an EMR because everybody else uses it. You're going to do your due diligence and see if it works for you, and that's why you go through the evaluation process. The second question I'll ask, and I'll wrap up and bring up the panelists here, but does anybody know the survey called KLAS, K-L-A-S? I see some heads nodding. Yes? Yes. So it's a widely known kind of third-party survey that rates EHRs based on customer service and product usage. And so in our first year, 2017, we were rated the #1 class EHR for small ambulatory private practices, so 1 to 10 providers. This is our first year last year was our first year participating, and we've moved to the #1 slot. That I think is very important to highlight because not only is it the usage of the product, but it's also your experience with the product and the team that is Elation, that I think a lot of our users, our customers, will attest to as well, is the service and the support is really, really above par. And that's very important. So that's a little bit about Elation. I want you to know that we're really excited about what we do. We work very closely with the physician community. That's where all of our focus is. We're a clinically focused platform. And yeah, if there aren't any questions, does anybody have any questions about the company, about the product, before we dive into the panel that I can help answer? Anything at all? Great. Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so the question was, is it a web-based program? It is exactly a web-based program. You do not need a disk to install this on site. You do not need any servers to store your data. There is no fee to store data with Elation, even though it's web-based. Completely cloud-based. Say someone signs up tomorrow, we can turn it on immediately for that practice with your credentials. Yeah.
How do you keep security?
Great question. So the question was, how do we keep it secure? So we are a 256-bit encrypted EHR, which is the standard for banking institutions. It's double what HIPAA requires. Yeah, we're a fully HIPAA compliant, ONC certified and secure EHR. We've never had a hack. We do run tests to hack the system, but it doesn't get hacked. So we have a full site redundant individual that will run tests and make sure that it is secure. Awesome. Well, again, oh yeah, another one. Yep, we are a site redundant EMR, so we have 3 backup servers across the country in different time zones. So in case of natural disaster, all of your data is secure and gets spun up on a different server in real time. Yep. What's that? Any capability to access with apps. Mobile. Yeah, we do have a mobile application for providers on Elation. We also have a patient app as well. So yeah, we do have both those applications running. That's great. I didn't expect all the questions, but that's amazing. Again, we have 4 Elation team members here. So as you have questions throughout the night, feel free to grab one of them. We have name tags as well. But I want to kind of get started into the panel because I think it's great to hear from me, this guy who's been at Elation for a few years, but it's also very important to hear from the physicians and our customers that use it who are graciously volunteering their hours tonight. So we'll get set up here, and then they'll introduce themselves. Great. So we have, as you can see, 3 panelists. I want to just run down the line, maybe starting at that end. If you guys could maybe introduce yourselves, how long roughly you've been using Elation, and then maybe your favorite one thing in one sentence about Elation.
My name is Philip Ng. I'm a nephrologist in solo practice in Redwood City and Palo Alto. I've been using Elation for 2 years now. And I guess my favorite thing is that it helps me to meet criteria for MIPS and other government requirements with minimal effort.
My name is Patrick Gartland. I'm a general surgeon in San Jose, just practice at O'Connor Hospital, which is about a mile away from here. I've only been an Elation user for approximately 4 months. Probably the best thing for me in my practice would be the fact I could generate consultation notes and some follow-up visits fairly quickly using dictation.
Hi, my name is Eric Weiss. I practice, actually trained in emergency medicine, but have been practicing general internal medicine for about 15 years. I run a concierge medicine practice called The Village Doctor up in Woodside. And we've been using Elation probably pushing 4 years. And I think my favorite thing, there are a lot of things that I like about Elation, but I think my favorite thing is that it really lets me practice clinically oriented medicine as opposed to kind of billing and coding and MIPS and just all of the jumping through the hoops kind of medicine. And we'll talk, I'm sure, more about that. But it's a very clinically oriented medical record for my primary care practice.
Great. Okay. And obviously you know who I am, but I've been at Elation for 4 years, pushing 4 years now. And yeah, I'm very excited to always be working with our physician community, listening to their feedback, and providing a platform for them to share their experiences with everyone. So I guess to get started, a question that I would have for the panel is what made you or want to adopt technology in your office, and specifically Elation? And we can start with Dr. Ng on this one.
Well, I've always been computer oriented because I was an electrical engineering major in college. So I was always using the computer to generate my medical records. But when the government Medicare started requiring us to be EHR based, I knew that none of the options out there would be in, the final perfect version. So I chose Dr. Chrono because it was really cheap, and I just wanted to be able to satisfy the minimum requirement of the government. But after a year or two, I realized that it wasn't going to be able to help me pass all the requirements that the government kept adding on every year. So my office mate, a pulmonologist, she was using eClinicalWorks and she wasn't happy with it. So somehow she discovered Elation. And then because we share office, she showed me how it was, and I had decided to adopt Elation.
Perfect. Dr. Gartland, what made you want to adopt technology in the first place, and what did you find appealing with Elation's technology? Well,
I also have a engineering background. I've always been interested in this, and actually was using computer physician order entry ever since about 1982 when I was an intern. I most recently, however, didn't think the cost benefit of migrating and using a lot of EMR at the office was worth it. I'm a surgeon, and a lot of the things I meet don't really have to go with MIPS criteria. I went ahead and just took the 2% or 3% cut because I didn't think at the time the amount of the EMRs out there were really going to cost me a lot more money than I was going to be saving. Ultimately, though, I ended up using a lot of templated Word documents, and after a couple of years I said there's got to be a better way. And I asked around my community, and there was a 10-man group in San Jose who I got a lot of referrals from, and I asked them, and they had already looked at eClinicalWorks and a variety of other ones, and they had gone with Elation for a couple of years. And basically, everybody I talked to really liked it, so I said, well, I'll go with that. And that's basically where I'm at. But it's only been 4 months.
So it sounds like some of the office efficiency and the cost-benefit analysis originally swayed you, and then the community aspect of having peers around you who could validate it was very helpful.
Certainly, and the more peers you have who actually are on it, in my case, referring doctors, they can refer a patient through the EMR, and not only that, when I click on that referral, as they'll show you, it self-populates my medical record already. Now, of course, I have to go through that, but having someone else in someone else's office do all the footwork works pretty good for me.
That's good feedback. Dr. Weiss, what would you say made you want to adopt technology and what you find appealing in Elation?
Well, as one of the offices that does all that footwork, I appreciate that value. But really for me, can you guys hear this? Really for me, 4 years ago, the short answer is it's in the cloud. I started our practice about 15 years ago, and again, early on did my homework, and at the time, eClinicalWorks was what I thought the best fit for us. But for lots of different reasons, again, going back in time, we were server-based, in the office, local network, had our IT guy, and there's a whole lot of headache and expense, it turns out, that comes along with that I hadn't appreciated. We spent probably 5 years waiting for the cloud to become kind of solid enough and secure enough and feel comfortable moving to the cloud. But sort of everything else was. My bank was in the cloud. Turns out then our billing system went into the cloud. And just increasingly, I became comfortable with the idea of using an EMR in the cloud and going from an office-based local area network server-based practice to having a product in the cloud, I can't tell you, is just night and day. To be able to hand this off into the ethers for a company that is very responsive around when there's a problem, but in general, there's sort of nothing going down in my practice. So I think if I were looking at one thing that got me from our old technology to the new technology, it was that. The other example I would use, you'll hear eClinicalWorks come up a few times because they were really a big gorilla, 10 years ago or so. And the best example I can use in terms of why or how Elation feels different from eClinicalWorks really speaks to are you a Mac person or a PC person? And eClinicalWorks was very much a PC flavored product, just in terms of the user interface and kind of the design and the thinking, and kind of you turn it on and kind of how did you feel looking at it? It was very much a PC product. I'm very much a Mac guy. I like design and I like the use and feel that you get on a Mac machine. And Elation, the first time it was showed to me, I was like, oh, this is kind of a breath of fresh air. It was easy on the eyes, it was intuitive, it was very easy to start to use. And that combination, being in the cloud and being able to use it quickly, and again, which we'll get to I'm sure in a little bit, being more clinically oriented, it made it for us a really easy choice. And I would say overall over these 4 years, we've been really happy with this product and with this company. Despite the fact they bought me dinner, just to be transparent. But other than that, nothing. I'm a fan and offered to come down here to talk to you guys about it.
We appreciate that very, very much so. Just to get a show of hands, just because we just talked about a couple of different EMRs through our panelists here. Does anybody use any of those similar EMRs, the Dr. Kronos, the Epics, or the eClinicalWorks? Any of those kind of larger EMRs? Got it. Okay. Just curious. That's really good feedback. Maybe Dr. Gartland, we can start with you on this one. As a private specialist, what business goals would you say were essential for you to achieve or maintain when adopting technology? And when looking at Elation, how does that stay consistent and grow?
Well, in addition to trying to do that cost-benefit analysis, I was influenced by talking to a lot of people, one of which was a physician who worked in the clinics at Stanford when they put in Epic, and he said that basically there's this is the clinic now, not the outpatient side, not the inpatient side. And he was saying how there's a 30% hit in efficiency for I don't know how long, maybe a year or two. And talking to a lot of people, they're talking about having to spend a lot of money to get the data inputted. And I really can't afford to hire another medical assistant just to input data. Either it's going to be the medical assistant I have or me. And obviously it's not cost efficient to have a surgeon as a keyboard operator. So I kind of wanted to look at systems that A, didn't cost very much, and there are free systems out there, and B, systems that where I could get the information that I wanted to put in and not have to fill out everything in the program. So in addition, I also needed to computerize my medical records because I'm not going to be running my practice forever, and I'm not going to be that guy with 10,000 paper charts in his garage, when he's retired. So I wanted to be moving everything to a medium that I could carry around with me if necessary, or park in my office at home. So those are the kind of things I was looking at.
Mm-hmm. That's very helpful. That's really, really good insight. Dr. Ng, what business goals could you think of that were essential to effectively adopt technology that came into play when you were evaluating technology and Elation?
Well, I used many different EMRs, and so it doesn't bother me so much if I have to learn how to use each one, because I could learn to use it and use it quickly. But I would say, because I'm in private practice and I'm a specialist, it's really important to me that I be able to get a nice note back to a referring doctor and other colleagues who share the patient with me, and not send them something that's like 8 or 10 pages with a lot of filler stuff. Like if you use Epic, it's very hard to get a nice letterhead, so that they see your name, your address, your telephone number, so they'll refer another patient, But with Elation, that was possible. With Epic, it wasn't, So I would say to generate a reasonably efficient-looking note and send it back to other doctors was very important to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Efficiency relevant to a clinical workflow, not having extra documentation, faxes that are flying around. It's kind of ironic that we're all on EMRs, but there's still a ton of paper being flown around. Dr. Weiss, what were maybe some of the specific business goals starting your business in evaluating technology that you thought of and applied to your evaluation of Elation?
Well, let me start with just a big thank you to the specialists that are sending us letters that are useful, well-written, personalized, and not full of filler. But for me, and again, there's a little bit of a customer service piece with the referring physician being the customer, which I appreciate. In my practice, which again, the business model is very different, but my customer is the patient, and I really want to delight our customer. So for me, my answer to this would be around the patient-facing piece of Elation and the portal that Elation provides. And again, yes, you can log into My Health at Epic and the like, and it has, again, that sort of, or at least then, certainly 5 years ago, it was either not available or kind of cluttered and not very elegant. And Elation's portal facing the patient, again, it showed well. It represented well, I think, the kind of care and polish that our practice was trying to provide. So that the business piece was around delighting our patients.
Yeah, and I think patients can appreciate that too when they can easily access something, but it's the key relevant information is there. They don't have to go digging through.
Right.
And the same can apply, as Dr. Ng said, from providers not going digging through separate documentation from another EMR. Dr. Weiss, I want to stay with you on this one just because I want to talk a little bit about quality measure, like performance tracking, and I know that applies differently to you in your practice. And what I want to talk about is some of those reminders and the insights that you have with Elation inside the patient chart, health maintenance reminders and things like that, and how you find that the way that Elation lays that out helpful to at least document and have a good understanding of where your patient's at, and then moving forward, taking the right actions from there then on.
Well, there's a lot in that question. I think one of the things I would suggest for all, I don't know if you've all had a kind of a look at Elation or how Elation is designed. One of the pieces that was compelling to me with Elation, again, we can contrast Epic, or probably most of us have looked into Epic. Elation is very oriented from a primary care perspective around the patient and presenting a picture of what's going on with the patient. Whereas Epic to me is I don't even know quite how I would describe Epic. We could all come up with a good one-word description of Epic, but it's different. Elation, as you'll see, has this left-sided panel, this clinical profile that stays front and center, and we wind up really using that as almost our documentation tool. So we document. You come in to see me as a patient. I actually don't document in the chart right away. I document in this clinical profile. And then once that's up to date, which is pretty quick to bring up to date, from there, I can push that data all kinds of different places. I can push it into the note really easily. I can push it in a letter to whoever I might want to refer to. I can push it to the patient for them to be able to read it and cross-check it. So it's a very different kind of design philosophy, which is not quite getting at your question around metrics.
No, but maybe not
right?
quality metrics, but it is quality care because your documentation is cleaner, it's more organized, which allows you to...
It allows us to engage my colleagues and engage my patients around the quality care, around being up to date. Patients who are complicated, who have 7 or 8 or 9 ongoing active problems, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's easy for things to get lost. And this clinical profile allows for kind of one place for there to be a current repository that I can see, the specialist can see, and the patient can see. And that's probably, for me, the most important cross-check. I have patients come back, and I really encourage them to look at their chart and to correct me on whatever it is. When did you have that CT scan? These are the medicines you're taking now, right? So that I find as a metric really valuable. There are a couple of little things I think maybe to really get to your question that Elation uses that eClinicalWorks didn't have quite as well. There's this in-office messaging that works pretty well, and there's a way to post-date messaging. So I can see a patient, and I think my colleague really should know about it either tomorrow, or they should know about it in a week, or I should know about it in a week and do something. I can send messages within the office and have them show up at different times to
Enhance
different
visibility.
people. And that can be really helpful, again, as a metric. One of the the beauties of concierge medicine is that we're not beholden to external metrics, and so the whole MIPS, MACRA, Medicare piece, I'm happy to say that functionality is not important to me.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into Dr. Ng. You were talking earlier to me about how you utilize Elation, your staff really utilizes Elation for the MIPS, the quality measure tracking. First, I guess, how does your staff utilize Elation for that MIPS tracking, and did you have any processes, or was Elation just kind of intuitive enough for your staff to start doing that with you?
Okay, so it's not hard to do the things that are expected. Like, Elation makes it really apparent that if the BMI is out of range, then there's this tab that you kind of, because I'm obsessive, I want to get rid of that. So then, you'll go through the tab and it's really easy to address it. Or if you never address whether they smoked or not, or even if their blood pressure is out of range, there's a tab that you want to get rid of and address it. So when you address all those things and other things too, like they have these handouts that you can click and print out the handouts and give to the patient, and then that'll satisfy some requirement. It's all, they just make it easy for you to do. I mean, if you take these online CME, let's say an article, and you read it, and at the end you have to answer some questionnaire like, was this relevant to your practice? If you can answer those kind of questions and meet that survey questionnaire at the end, that's how easy it is to meet all these MIP criteria with the Elation. You just click, click, click. It used to be, they say if you didn't document it, you didn't do it. Elation makes it easy so that if you document it, you did it.
That's a really good point. I think knowing Elation really well, being at the company for quite a while, that's something we want to do with almost everything that we iterate inside the product. And so MIPS, obviously, it's a thorn in your guys' side because you're proving something that you're already doing. So some physicians called meaningful use, meaningless use. I totally understand that. At the same time, you're going to be penalized for it, and you need to prove it moving forward. And so what I think Dr. Ng, you do a really good job of describing is a natural workflow that we have put these kind of extra measures for you guys to hit, that it's natural to a physician's workflow. And that's the idea. We don't want it to be invasive. So that's a really, really good take. I appreciate that insight. Dr. Gartland, I know you've only been on Elation for a few months, pushing 4 months now. Would you agree in what you've seen from Elation, maybe not using it a ton the same way like a primary care physician would use it as a specialist, but do you see yourself doing less work along like that quality performance tracking when you do see a Medicare patient?
Well, I do see a lot of Medicare patients, but as a surgeon, I'm not really that much involved in MIPS that would you think of. I was involved in MACRA, and I fulfilled some of my qualifications through the original MACRA. As far as I could see, I could see that in the program there are these various things that Dr. Ng is talking about, but you can actually turn those off, I believe, because I don't see them very often myself. I'm not going to get any credit for talking to someone for 5 minutes about smoking. It's way out of my bailiwick to do so, and so I don't. And I would defer to Dr. Ng about how easy it is as far as the program itself and how it works.
Yep, totally. Dr. Weiss, I want to start with you on this one again and then continue with Dr. Gartland. But I think it would be helpful to understand, since you have gone through a couple of evaluations of technology, and you all have, in your own different ways and different amounts of systems. Do you have best practices, or can you talk about how you would balance budget with value in an evaluation process? And second part to that question would be specifically towards Elation. How did you balance budget with Elation? Would be, I think, pretty helpful for the audience.
So actually I have to say, budget for us wasn't a big factor. Mm-hmm. Certainly Elation's price point was, kind of almost no-brainer mm-hmm. in the sense of, okay, there's a per
Nominal
seat
fee, yeah.
fee. I mean, it's not nominal,
right,
it's not free, but it's certainly reasonable at the time when we were starting to look at this in the context of how central your EHR is or EMR is to your just like every moment virtually, mm-hmm. right? It's in our practice, it's such an integral part of what we do. Just everything we do, we live in Elation. We lived in our EHR. Not to pick on Elation. So you're going to live in your EHR, certainly in a primary care practice. So the cost is important, but for us it was probably fifth on the list, if you will.
Okay.
I'm making that number up. It was well down the list. Mm-hmm. There were the big gorillas that were in the tens of thousands or
right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we didn't even look at that.
Upfront costs,
right.
and things like that.
Upfront costs and annual licensing costs, etc. You can spend a lot of money on an EMR. But if you're in all the ones that we sort of mentioned, Practice Fusion, Dr. Chronos,
Office Ally, ECW, yeah.
There's a bunch. I think I haven't looked in a while, but I think they're all kind of in the same ballpark. Mm-hmm. And they're in a ballpark for something that we use as heavily as we use, actually is really good value. And I think in a practice now, we have 4 physicians and, there's a team of 10 of us. So there's 4 physicians and 6 other sort of support staff. And it's interesting to go back to the early days, how much I thought, how much can it cost to have a phone system? How much can it cost to have a billing system? And the thinking was, it can't cost that much. Or, you can get away with a 4-line phone from Costco or something like this, which is how we started. Mm-hmm. But as you get bigger, what you learn is that phone system is key and it has to work. And all it takes is 1 or 2 days of spending all day trying to troubleshoot your phone system, and you sure wish that you paid a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So same, your EHR needs to be at a basic, needs to be available and solid and working.
Right.
And I think the fee structure that we're talking about gets you there, and then all of the plus that we've been speaking about, to me, was just bonus. So it's a long, long way of saying that I think the pricing on all of these, not to make it unimportant, but it was certainly not important in in our choice.
Right.
The value proposition was really straightforward.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. I think tying value to what you use, if you can tie value to it, is something that would be advantageous when you're using an EMR for a year down the road. You've been with the same system for a year.
And I would just add the phone, which is really pretty simple. We're looking at, again, cloud-based for some of the same reasons, system from Comcast. It costs roughly half of what we're paying for our EMR. And the EMR is so much more important and so much more sophisticated. So again, I think the price point is, I shouldn't say that to you because my price is going to go up, but it's a really good value for us.
Dr. Gartland, would you have the similar assessment in your evaluations of EMR as the previous ones you've used? Did you find value? I know you found out about Elation through the community, and that's the first step. But looking at it yourself, was the value and the budget balance something you had to go through?
I really have very little to add to what Dr. Weiss said. I will simply say, yes, I went through the same kind of analysis. Again, many years ago, you really couldn't do anything for less than $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 a seat, maybe $40,000 a seat. But there are a lot of price competitive other alternatives on the market. Office Ally, I believe, is free. Practice Fusion is free. But why would I pick something where I have to pay for it if something else is free? Now that was a key decision for me because I have a very small office. And in fact, I had to sit down and say, this is what I want to do. And then, of course, it was the referrals from other doctors who had done a lot of more footwork than I have. And then when I looked at it and I saw what I could do and how much it was going to cost, basically I went ahead and signed up for it, especially the fact that in order to get up to speed on the program, it didn't require a huge amount of teaching. They call you on the phone, you have a few 1-hour conferences with the guy, and then it's kind of like, okay, it's turned on, go to it. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Now, again, I don't use some of the features that Dr. Eng does. You want to be a power user, then you have to talk to these guys a little bit more on the phone. But it does what I want it to do at a price that I'm willing to pay. Again, could have gotten something else for free. My impression was that I was going to pay for it in the end with either time or what I wanted to get out of it. So that's why I went with Elation.
Dr. Ing, I want to close that topic with you because I know you've been on the platform for a couple of years now, like you said. Are there any best practices or, are there specific things that you can recommend to the audience around budget and balancing that with value? How did you find value in Elation, and what could you maybe recommend to kind of take that next step forward?
I didn't think it was that expensive. I mean, I heard much higher prices for some of the other competing EMRs, so it's not so expensive that I really even think about it. And it offers a lot of features that I don't have to spend extra money on. Like, I use the Elation to fax out because it's free. I think there's some limit to how many free faxes there are, but it's so high that it's not relevant to me, because I have a fax modem server, and my faxes, I get like so many faxes every day, and I don't want that fax occupied by sending out, because if I'm sending out, then I can't receive. So it's important that I be able to receive. So I use Elation to send out, and that's free, and because it's all the information is stored in the cloud, it's very easy to drag what I get from other vendors. Like, I get my patient. I let my patients go to any radiology imaging center they want to, and any lab they want to. And so when I get the lab results or reports or anything, it's so easy to just drag it into Elation, and then it uploads it, and I don't have to, spend any money on storage or anything. I never think about that,
Yeah, that's good feedback. Ideally, you're not sending 6 extra pages for each fax, which Elation does not make you do, which is a good thing.
And if you give out the fax number to those radiologists or Quest, the fax will go directly to the EMR. It won't be listed under the patient because the EMR can't figure out who the patient is. You have to go in and parse that out. But it'll go straight to your EMR. Sometimes you don't even have to drag and drop sometimes.
Yeah, that's a really good point to add, and I think touching on that, we'll show that in some of these breakout sessions after the panel, and then also the kind of the clinical profile that Dr. Weiss was talking about too. Maybe one or two more questions I just have for the panel, and then I know I kind of want to get to those breakout sessions for you guys to see it from in live and in person. Do you, and we can, Dr. Ng, we can start with you on this one. Do you feel that using Elation, previously you were using Dr. Chrono, do you feel like Elation is set up for you to make better decisions on patient care at the right time?
Help me to make patient care decisions. I don't know.
Well, I guess more educated and maybe better decisions in the right time because the information is displayed in a certain way. It's easy for you to access specific clinical information, write a note.
Well, certainly
easier.
It's not a hindrance. That's
Right.
for sure. It's very easy. I mean, I have two 27-inch monitors, so I have lots of desktop space. And I multitask. I open up many applications at the same time. And Elation is one of those that allow me to multitask. And it doesn't interfere with what I need to do things really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll see that in the longitudinal approach. Dr. Weiss, do you feel like Elation is set up in a more user-friendly way for you to access information easier and
Yeah.
make those right decisions?
So, again, I would say yes. I also have that air traffic control set up with two big screens. But what Elation lets me do that's different, I talked about that clinical profile, so that I really have, I think, a pretty accurate and current profile story on the left side. All those inbound faxes, it's all that sort of paper stuff. We're paperless, so it all comes faxed right in. My staff do have to assign it to the patient chart and then assign it to the right sort of bucket, right? So is it a lab result or a imaging result, et cetera? But it's all very easy to get. Our labs, we have to use the technical term, a BiDi. Actually, that's not, we have an electronic interface with LabCore. So our labs all come in digitally. So there's a lot of data in here. And between that profile and then the one really big plus that no one's mentioned is search. So at least when I was using eClinicalWorks, there was no search functionality. And Elation has a pretty powerful search functionality. And you can just right up top search whatever it is you're sort of trying to think about in terms of your clinical question, and be it a PSA level or the abdominal CT or the cardiology consult. And you can search for that and parse everything down. So there's a lot of information management that makes it really easy. It's easy on the eyes, as I've said. So I do think it's an easy platform to work in.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. That's something else we'll show you too. That search functionality is really unique to where I remember I was working with a physician in one of these kind of settings, and he said, Roy, one of the easiest things I can do is search for a patient's knee pain that happened 6 years ago. And the patient looks at me and they're like, you remembered that? He says he's getting older, but his patients think he's getting younger. And I think that is definitely something to point out as well. Dr. Gartland, I'll just finish with you. I know, again, you're using Elation fairly new. Do you feel like you're set up for success using a product like Elation and having the community around you? Obviously, you're going to make the right decisions in patient care, but do you feel like this system is set up integrally in your practice to do that?
Well, I think the last sentence you just said is applicable. If you're a good detail-oriented physician, you're going to be a good detail-oriented physician, and you're going to check stuff no matter what, whether you're using an abacus or a Hewlett-Packard calculator. The EMR is a tool. Any EMR is going to give you information. The question is it going to be in a usable format where you can access it very quickly? And I think in this particular case, it's doing the job for me. Again, unlike most of you, I'm only going to see most of my patients 2 or 3 times. I'm not going to be following them for 15 years. But of the patients I do need to follow for a long period of time, I can see where this information is going to be easily accessible, again, through that left-hand pane that you're going to see on the demonstrations of the program. So the answer is yes, it helps a lot. But I don't know, I have a problem with EMRs claiming that I'm going to be that much of a better physician. I was a pretty good physician before I bought an EMR.
Yeah, I think I appreciate you making that point clear. I think what EMRs should not do is be a hindrance and get in the way of patient care. In fact, it should give you more time with your patient if you choose to have more time with your patient, more eye time, more face time. So that minimally invasive topic is really, I agree, it's very, very relevant. I want to leave maybe 5 minutes open just for questions, and if you three are open to it, just to hear some questions from the audience. And then I definitely want to just jump into these 15-minute breakout sessions, and then I want to leave time for you guys to go home to your families as well. I know you guys are all busy. So are there any questions just for the panelists so far? Yeah.
So I have always been interested in medical practice. How easy so do you mean that the relation EHR guide us to report
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Ng, do you want to answer that, or do you? And I can
that
help
was
a
the
little
main
bit.
reason why I switched to Elation, because the previous EMR I was using didn't allow me to easily meet all the criterias, and I didn't want to spend a lot of my time meeting the criteria. So I would say that's a great benefit for Elation. It's so easy. Click, 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 and then my staff helps me to do the reporting. So because I don't really think that kind of stuff is important, but then I don't want to take the reimbursement, hit.
So the question was, how often do you have to report?
Oh, well, I think my staff reports it once a year, but you're always, you're always addressing those issues. Like, for some reason, if the blood pressure is not under control, it tells you the blood pressure is not under control. What are you going to do about it? And then they offer this tab where you say, well, I told them the, salt restriction, exercise, lose weight, and you just click on that. And then when your staff is ready to compile when your office staff is ready to do the reporting, Elation does the compiling, and you'll get a report that you've done this for 80% of your patients, or you've done that for 60%, and then my staff will say, you still haven't reached this one yet, like maybe the one where you asked a patient to use a messaging, you haven't, maybe you didn't have 2 patients do it. That's the minimum. So then I'll purposely go and find 2 patients who will use the computer, and I'll say, hey, I'm going to send you a message. Can you reply to me just so that I can meet the criteria? So.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback. So, and I think why that's important what Dr. Ng said, because he answers that very tactically, which is very relevant for the work that you all will be doing in Elation, hopefully. There's also in Elation kind of the dashboards that we have that will give you a macro level, so your entire population level of what you've met and what you haven't, and it breaks it down on a per measure basis. But what Dr. Ng said there, I think that was really important, is you're always doing it. Elation's naturally and natively always allowing you to hit these measures. So, for example, in 2017, you had to report for the first reporting period, you had to report on 90 days of MIPS criteria to get an extra reimbursement, a pool of money that CMS set aside. So you were constantly doing it for 12 months. A lot of our physicians were doing it for 12 months, but they only reported on 90 days to push that out. So you're always doing it with Elation, and we're always putting the right measures in there natural to your workflow. And then at the end of 12 months, you can say, okay, I can pull this report for this reporting period, for these 3 months reporting period, and you can have that data.
I would say the Elation, meeting let's say your patient's blood pressure isn't within go range. Now, Elation made it really easy for you to meet the criteria. They didn't make it so that you have to write out how you switched blood pressure medication from one to the other. I mean, that would take a lot of time for me to document that to meet the criteria. They offered a simple tab that said you told them to restrict salt or to lose weight, exercise, which is what you would do anyway. But, to really get the blood pressure down, you got to maybe add a medication or switch. So they didn't Elation didn't force you to say that's what you did to lower the blood pressure, you know?
Let's do one more question and then let's bounce into the breakout sessions. Is there one more question for the panelists? Perfect. Well, if we could all give the panelists a round of applause, I really appreciate you all coming out. So we are going to jump into these breakout sessions. Give us like 30 seconds just to set up with computers at the monitors, finish a little bit of dessert, and then in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I'll come back and we'll get ready. And you guys can come to any of these 3 stations. So there's a number 3 over here to my left. There's one directly behind me, and then there's one over there where it says number 1 breakout session.
Is a squeezer? Is that what that is?